the structure of our reason in relation to the object. Demands equal validity for both principles, and attains it by formulating the monistic principle of seeking to bring unity out of multiplicity so far as possible, i.e. as if we ought to end with absolute monism, and by formulating the pluralistic principle of not resting content with any unity, but always searching for yet simpler elements and creative forces, i.e. as if the final result should be pluralism. The same is the case if one explores pluralism in its qualitative significance, the individual differentiation of things and destinies, their separation according to quality and value. Our innermost vital consciousness oscillates between this separateness and the solidarity among the elements of our existence. Sometimes life only seems bearable by enjoying happiness and bliss in complete separation from suffering and depression, and by keeping these rare moments free from any remembrance of less exalted and contradictory experiences. Then again, it seems more admirable, and indeed the very challenge of life, to experience joy and sorrow, strength and weakness, virtue and sin as a living unity, each one being a condition of the other, each sacred and consecrating the other. We may seldom be aware of the general principle in these opposing tendencies, but they determine our attitude towards life in our endeavors, our aims, and our fragmentary activities. Even when a person's character seems to be completely oriented in one of these directions, it is constantly thwarted by the other tendency, as diversion, background, and temptation. People are not divided into categories by the contrast between differentiation and unification of their life experiences. This contrast exists in every individual, although his interpersonal form evolves in interaction with his social form, which moves between individualization and socialization. The essential point is not that these two trends constitute life, but that they are interdependent in a heuristic form. It seems as if our life employs or consists of a unified basic function which we are unable to grasp in its unity. We have to dissect it by analysis and synthesis, which constitutes the most general form of that contradistinction, and whose cooperation then restores the unity of life. But the singular entity in its separateness makes an absolute claim on us, and the unity that comprehends everything singular makes the same demand, so that a contradiction emerges from which life often suffers. This contradiction becomes a logical contradiction, since both elements presuppose each other in their existence. Neither would have any objective meaning or intellectual interest if the other did not stand in opposition to it. Thus the peculiar difficulty arises, as with many other contrasted pairs, that something unconditioned is conditioned by another unconditioned item which in turn depends on the former. The fact that what we perceive as absolute is nevertheless relative can only be resolved by admitting that the absolute signifies a road stretching to infinity whose direction is still marked out no matter how great the distance we cover. The movement in each segment, so long as it continues, takes a course that appears to lead to a terminal point. This sense of direction remains unchanged even if at some point the movement assumes another direction which is subject to the same norm. All general and particular systems of knowledge meet in this form of the mutual interdependence of thought processes. If one attempts to understand the political, social, religious, or any other cultural aspects of the present time, this can be achieved only through history, i.e., by knowing and understanding the past. But this past, which comes down to us only in fragments, through silent witnesses and more or less unreliable reports and traditions, can come to life and be interpreted only through the experiences of the immediate present. No matter how many transformations and quantitative changes are required, the present, which is the indispensable key to the past, can itself be understood only through the past, and the past, which alone can help us to understand the present, is accessible only through the perceptions and sensibilities of the present. All historical images are the result of this mutuality of interpretative elements, none of which allows the others to come to rest. Ultimate comprehension is transferred to infinity, since every point in one series refers to the other series for its understanding. Psychological knowledge is a similar case. Every human being who confronts us is only a sound-producing and gesticulating automaton for our direct experience. We can only infer that there is a mind behind this appearance, and what processes are going on in it, by analogy with our own mind, which is the only mental entity directly known to us. On the other hand, self-knowledge develops only through the knowledge of others, and the fundamental cleavage of the self into an observed and an observing part comes about only through the analogy of the relation between the self and other persons. Knowledge of ourselves has therefore to find its way through other beings, whose lives we are able to interpret, however, only from self-knowledge. Thus, the knowledge of mental phenomena is an interplay between the I and the you. Each refers to the other, in a constant interchange and exchange of elements against each other, through which truth, no less than economic value, is produced. And finally, to take a more comprehensive view, modern idealism produces the world from the ego. The mind creates the world, the only world that we can discuss and that is real for us, according to its receptivity and its ability to construct forms. But on the other hand, this world is also the original source of the mind. From the glowing ball of matter, which we may conceive as the condition of the earth before there was any life, a gradual development has resulted in the possibility of life, and these living beings, at first purely material and without mind, have finally, in ways still unknown, produced the mind. Considered historically, the mind with all its forms and contents is a product of the world, of the same world which is in turn a product of the mind because it is a world of representations. If these two genetic possibilities are rigidly conceptualized, they result in a disturbing contradiction.